The Tampa Bay Rays just went 9-0 on a West Coast road trip. They're 74-46. They're sitting 6.5 games ahead of the Yankees in the AL East. And somehow I still feel like people aren't taking this team seriously. And honestly, I don't really understand it anymore. I get why people were skeptical earlier in the season. I get why you might have looked at Tampa and thought, okay, they're good, but eventually they're going to fall back to earth. That's a pretty reasonable thing to think about a team like the Rays, especially when you look at the teams they're competing with and realize, they don't have the same star power or payroll that some of these other contenders have. But we're in August now, and at some point you have to stop waiting for the Rays to fall apart and just start accepting that maybe this is just who they are. They went across the country and didn't lose a single game. They swept the Rockies in Colorado, swept the Mariners in Seattle, and then went into West Sacramento and swept the Athletics. On Wednesday, they finished it off with an 8-4 win, getting 3 hits and 4 RBIs from Liam Hicks, including a 3-run homer, while Drew Rasmussen gave them another solid start. So now you're looking at 9 straight wins and the best record in the American League. And I just don't really know how much more evidence people need. The Rays aren't just having one of those random 2-week stretches where everything goes right. They've been one of the best teams in baseball for basically the entire season. And, now they've built this 6.5, 7-game lead over the Yankees. And that's a pretty significant gap, especially with where we are in the middle of August right now. And the funny thing is, I still feel like if you ask 10 baseball fans to name the 5 best teams in baseball right now, there's a pretty good chance the Rays don't make this list. Obviously, that's for a casual fan, but that's just because, they don't really have the type of roster that jumps off the page. If you're looking at the Dodgers, obviously, you know exactly why they're good. You have superstar after superstar, and every time you turn on a Dodgers game, there's somebody you've heard about. The Yankees are the same way. Obviously, a lot of those guys are on the injured list, but, you have Aaron Judge, you have all the big names, and even when they're struggling, people are talking about them constantly just because they're a big market team, and the Rays don't really work that way. They just keep winning, and every few days you look at the standings and go, wait, they're still in first? Yep, they're still in first, and now they're just building that lead, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons this team has been able to do this is because they don't really need one specific player to carry them every night. You saw that on this road trip. On Tuesday against Oakland, Tampa tied a franchise record with 6 home runs in a 12-4 win. Taylor Wallace hit 2 of them. Junior hit 1, Yandy hit 1, Victor Mesa hit 1, Carson Williams also went deep. Then the very next day they won again, this time 8-4, and it was Liam Hicks who stepped up with 3 hits and 4 RBIs, and that's just what really makes this team annoying to play against. You can't just say, okay, we're going to stop Junior Caminero and then we'll be fine, because maybe you do stop him and then somebody else beats you, and obviously Caminero is a huge part of what makes this team dangerous. He's having an incredible season, and I think we're probably still not talking about him enough nationally. He's sitting at 35 home runs and 77 RBIs, and he's doing that at 22 years old. That's the kind of season that would be one of the biggest stories in baseball if he played for one of these huge market teams. But because he's in Tampa, it almost makes you feel like you have to go looking for the story, and that's probably the biggest thing I want people to understand about these Rays. They aren't good because everything has gone perfectly for them. They're good because they keep finding different ways to win. They could hit the ball out of the ballpark. They can win close games. They can get big performances from their pitching. They can get contributions from guys who aren't necessarily household names. And then you look up and they've won 74 games. That's not an accident. That's not something you could just explain away by saying, well, they've had a pretty easy schedule. You could do that for a week, maybe 2 weeks. You can't really do it for 120 games into the season. This road trip is especially impressive because, that's a brutal thing to do in baseball, regardless of the teams that you're playing. You're traveling across the country, you're playing every day, you're dealing with different ballparks, different time zones. And, by the end of it, you're pretty damn tired. The Rays didn't just survive it. They didn't just have a good road trip. I mean, they literally won every single game and went 9-0. They became only the second East Coast team in modern MLB history to go 9-0 on a West Coast road trip, joining the 1977 Red Sox. That's the kind of statistic that sounds like something you would make up, for a movie, but they actually did it. And now they're coming home with a 9-game winning streak and a chance to really start putting pressure on the rest of the American League, because that's the other thing. We're getting to the point in the season where there's not really much of we'll see what happens. We're getting close enough to October. We're past the trade deadline. These games are actually starting to tell us what these teams are going to look like in the postseason. And if I'm another team in the American League, I don't know if I want to see Tampa Bay. Not because there's some unstoppable super team where you look at the lineup and think there's no way you're beating them. It's almost the opposite. They're dangerous because you don't really know where the next problem is going to come from. You could have a plan for Caminero, but then somebody else has a big game. You could have a great offensive night and suddenly Tampa's pitching shuts you down. And, you think you got them late in the game sometimes and they find a way to come back. I mean, they've just been winning in every possible way this season. And that usually ends up being those kind of teams that are annoying in October and find a way to win those series. Now, obviously, I'm not going to say the Rays are guaranteed to win the American League. I'm not saying, they're guaranteed to even make the ALCS. That's baseball. But you could be the best team in your league for 6 months and then have one bad series in October and you're going home. So I'm not going to sit here and say Tampa's definitely winning the World Series because, the Dodgers exist and there's some other heavy hitters in the AL East and the rest of the American League. But I do think we're at the point where calling them like a cute little story or a team that's eventually going to regress is just getting ridiculous. Like, they have 74 wins right now. They have a great division lead. They're on a big winning streak. They have a 22-year-old superstar in the middle of the lineup who's at 35 home runs. So, what exactly are we waiting for? At some point, you have to look at the standings and say, yeah, this is just a really good team. And maybe the reason people aren't talking about them enough is because Tampa doesn't really need everybody to talk about them. They're not trying to, make headlines. They just go and win games. And so far, they've been doing that better than basically everybody in the American League. That's why I think this next stretch is going to be really interesting because now they're coming home, which, they have a ridiculous record at home this season. I'm pretty sure it's the best in baseball. And they're playing the Orioles. They have Toronto coming in. They play the Orioles again. And then they go on the road to face a very hot Detroit Tigers team. So we're going to get a lot more chances to see what this team looks like now that everybody has a chance to realize that they're not going away. And I think as we start getting into September, October, the conversations are going to change because this is probably your number one seed in the American League. And yeah, if they're going to make a deep playoff run, they're going to need everyone to be on the field and keep playing the type of baseball that they're playing. But yeah, if you got Caminero going into October hitting like this, Tampa has that kind of middle of the order bat that could change a playoff series. And then if you just combine that with everything else they're getting from this roster, and I think you have a team that's much more dangerous than people realize. Because the American League this year just is not strong. The Yankees, who I'm obviously a fan of, they're a good team on paper when they're healthy, but they just have too many injuries right now. And just a bunch of big question marks going into the playoffs. The Red Sox have been the hottest team in baseball since the All-Star break. They've obviously cooled down a little bit and have gone on a little bit of a losing streak, but they're still a team that could get hot in October. And then you have all of the AL Central teams bunched up there. No one knows who's going to win the division, who's going to make the playoffs there. But the American League is very wide open for this Tampa Bay Rays team that is extremely talented. So yeah, let me know what you think. Like, I feel like the general public isn't really looking at the Rays as this big contender. I'm not really sure where like the betting odds are. Obviously the Dodgers are a huge favorite, but if I'm taking a team right now to come out of the American League, I'm picking the Tampa Bay Rays. And I feel like most people are saying like Yankees or Red Sox or whatever. So I think the Rays are just being completely disrespected because, they're one of the best three teams in baseball. You could argue they're the second best team in baseball right now, behind the Dodgers. So yeah, I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think Tampa deserves to be in that top tier of, Dodgers? And obviously, like, the Brewers are almost like the Rays of the NL. I feel like the Brewers and the Rays are very similar teams in how they're constructed. And you can make another video on them with how much disrespect they get. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks.